Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia and this is the situation report or the summary for the day of 1176 to 1177 for the 14th to 15th of May 2025. So we're going to there's a lot of crazy frontline change. The Russians have captured so much in the past 2 days. Ukrainian viewers, just be careful. It's gonna hurt quite a bit. So we're going to start off with the Sumy front. So over at the Sumy front, at this Tekino sector, the Ukrainian incursion have largely seems to have stopped. The Russian forces is the one now on the offensive. It seems we're fighting reported at Rizivka, Atine, Vasilivka, Iskriskivskina, as well as Perlivka. Shellings, Vorozhba is mentioned. This should be Shelling. I used the wrong icon. Shelling is reported at Vorozhba as well as Bilopilia. So this is very far. The Ukrainians were the one that launched the offensive first in this sector. And now it seems like the Russians are the only one doing the attacking. So no, yeah, that's the case over here. Nearby over at the Sumy sector, we only have fighting reported at Satki. Then we have shelling reported at Marine, but that's all from this sector. There's not much intel about the situation around here, and there's nothing else over in the Kursk sector or the Belgorod incursion sector. So that's all. Looks like the Belgorod incursion is as good as over already, and the Kursk front is entirely over. We move into the Kharkiv front. This is Kharkiv city, and if I'm not wrong, this is the second most biggest city in Ukraine. And over in there is actually actions over in this Kozacha Lopan sector and the Lipsy sector. So fighting is reported at Kudievka as well as this place called Visoka Yaruha, which is you can see when I zoom in. So there is this attack happening around here, probably coming from Zuralevka. And this is interesting. What is there air base here? What the hell is this? Oh, okay. No idea. So anyway, then over at the Lipsy sector, Klipoke suddenly appear out into the reports on the Ukrainian side. We haven't seen any reporting on this since 9th of April. So this is more than a month since the last time Klipoke was mentioned. So this is a bit unusual. We shall see how what this does. Over at the Voskchansk sector, we still have the usual skirmish being reported at Voskchansk. Really nothing much to really talk about. This is it's just skirmish. And that's all from the Kharkiv front. We move on to the next front line, which is the Voroshna front. So this is Voroshna. So if I zoom in, this can see this is Voroshna, and this front line is the Voroshna front leading all the way to the Russian-Ukrainian border. Over in the northern flank, the battle around Kenyemka continues, reported by the Ukrainians on the 14th, only one day. Yesterday was not reported. In the southern side, there is only shelling reported over at Palamarivka, Neshvolodivka, as well as Sobolevka. So some real actions happening. Very gay. Over in the Kupiansk front, at the Kupiansk front, this is Kupiansk, by the way. There's a geolocation of a destruction of a Ukrainian position. Otherwise, fighting is being reported over at Kupiansk. Shelling reported at Kupiansk, Vozlovy. If I'm not wrong, yeah, Vozlovy. Fighting is reported towards Pischane, which is over here. And the fighting is reported at Huleshkivka. So, but that's about it. It seems like there is these three different directions that is currently happening, but so far from our reporting, there's not much changes around here nowadays. So I'm not going to expect too much for now. Over at the Borova front, so this is Borova city, and this is the Borova front. And over in the northern sector, because there's a lot more reports around here, so I can't zoom in. If I zoom in, you can't see much. Fighting is reported at Senkove, Kryakivka, Zarizove, Nova Kryakivka, Lozova, and towards Novoplatonivka. So this looks pretty intense for 2 days of reports. I wonder if this is a sign of increased activities around here. So we shall definitely have to keep a lookout for pay some attention on this part of the front line. A bit unusual if you ask me. Over on the eastern part, we have fighting reported over at Sverdokhlebove, wrong color, as well as Novoyehorivka. So this is mentioned by the Ukrainians on separate days. So this is 13. I wonder if this is like this is an old report. Yeah, maybe I didn't switch the color. So that's all from here. So over the next front line, which is the Liman front. This is Liman, and some major news over in the southern flank. But first, I need to talk about the northern flank first. Over in the northern flank, we have fighting reported at Druzhdelubivka, Kharkivka, Oheevka. Shelling is reported at Andrievka. Fighting is reported towards Novy Mer, Khrushchenkove, Ritkodub, Nove, Karpivka, as well as Zelena Dolena. As you can see, it's pretty intense. It's all over the place. The Russians are attacked across the entire front line. This basically a massive big arrow push at this moment in the direction of Oskil, which is over here, or at least the Oskil River. So there is some slight changes at Nove. I covered in the frontline changes report. Not going to rehash that. What's key is over in the southern flank. This is Liman city. Fighting is reported at Kolodziazy, Yampolivka, Zareshne, and at Torske. The Russian Defense Ministry announced capture. This is shocking that they actually announced capture. So the Russian Defense Ministry announced the capture of Torske or Torskoye. And there we have slight corroboration about this geolocation of Russian forces planting the flag over here, confirming at least capture around this sector of Torske. This doesn't necessarily mean the southern part is entirely captured yet, but we have this. This is a signal of a possibility that the Russians have captured the entirety of Torske, and which is going to be pretty major, because if I zoom out a bit, if the Russians have the entirety of Torske, this would also mean that they have fully secured Dibrova, and this would mean that the attack on Yampil is going to come, and this will also mean that the Russians is going to bring the fighting into Zarishne, and after Zarishne, then there's nothing much until Liman. Liman will be next. From Zarishne all the way will be Liman. The Ukrainians knew the vulnerability of Liman after the fall of Zarishne or Torske. They had already prepared previously with some major fortifications protecting Liman. So this is a pretty major announcement. I never thought that we're going to see the capture of Torske so soon. So this is pretty shocking, because we haven't even have confirmation about Yampolivka, and now they talk about Torske. So I think this is going to be pretty painful if this is all true. But we will wait. I think nowadays the Russian claims are pretty spot on nowadays. Not much of the false claim. So, but we shall see. Because usually we have the geolocations. Like this area, there is not much geolocation. They have mentioned capture of Yampolivka, also Merne, but we don't have confirmation about all this yet. So no, we have to be a bit patient about this. Ryhorodok is shelled, so that is interesting as well. So we move on to the next front line, which is the Siversk front. So this is Siversk city, and this is the Siversk front. Over at the Siversk front, we have fighting reported over at Blahorivka, Kryhorivka, Verkhamokanyamske, Siversk, as well as Fedorivka. So the Russians also seems to be operating much more heavily in this sector. We have one major direction of attack around here. Another one is coming from through Yampolivka, and there's some kind of indication that we seem to have a bit more actions or activities in the south as well. So maybe the Russians are starting to take Siversk more and more seriously, particularly in this northern flank attack, as well as the entrance into Verkhovno-Kanyamsky. These are all very, very major developments at Siversk front. I think casual viewers know of the Ukraine war, especially if they are following the pro-Ukrainian side, they probably may not know. I do not know. I don't watch the pro-Ukrainian YouTube videos, but they may not understand how severely important Siversk front is, because it has been the hallmark of Ukrainian defense. Like, this is the place where the Russians lost a lot of troops, and despite all the losses, they don't gain much. And lately, the Russians have been gaining ground, securing Bilohorivka, entering into Verkhovno-Kanyamsky, entering into Khorivka. All these are previously unimaginable stuff. So this is just something to note or to take note of. This is another artillery getting destroyed just north of Zvanivka. Like I said, the loss of artillery units or pieces is way too fast, I would say. No, I don't think the Ukrainians can sustain this kind of losses for too much longer. So this is Bakhmut, and we are now into the Bakhmut front. At the Bakhmut front, we have fighting reported at Krychorivka, Chasivya, as well as towards Varolibivka. There's a mention of Vasutinsky, which is kind of out of place, very far away. This area here, is very cursed. That I don't think there's not much to really talk about. And there is a geolocation of FPV drone hitting a Ukrainian armored vehicle. But generally, I don't expect too much from this sector. This is way too heavily defended. I really don't see the point of pushing this area. But the Russians do it anyway, so But if the Russians did manage to successfully do this, and they managed to develop a line of defense around Makove, Maisky, all the way to Shevone, fully securing Mykolaievka, Shevone, Chasivya, and all the way down to Priteshne, and overtaking some of these entrenchments that the Ukrainians have built. This will be a good defense line. Because the problem with the Bakhmut front is that I never believed the Russians meant to capture Bakhmut city. Like, I don't think the Russian defense ministry wanted it. The Wagner private military contractor decided on their own to push for it, and they succeeded to capture it. But Bakhmut city itself is a horrible geographical location to defend. The terrain here is horrible. It's really hard to defend. There's no place that seems sensible, and as you can see, the Russians do struggle quite a lot in this region here, which is probably why the Russians are now pushing through Chasivya, and maybe this is the line that they want. Because if the Russians don't hold this line, then the entire front line all the way south to at least I would say all the way south to Kuryomivka is super vulnerable. The entire front line is just vulnerable. It's super hard to defend. So this is why I think maybe the Russians are trying their best to push out. I personally do not think the Russians should go into Konstantinivka. I still feel like they should do a macro pincer, because if they go into Konstantinivka, and if the Ukrainians decided to make it the next Bakhmut, where they want to defend to the very end, then the entire city will be destroyed. Then they have to increase the more funds into rebuilding the city. So now we go into the next front line, which is the New York front. This is New York, and this is the New York front. So over on this eastern flank, we have fighting reported at Bilohora, Kudyumivka. Oleksandro Shutine was mentioned. It might be coming from the north. The Ivanopilia is mentioned, Plishevka is mentioned, Dilievka is mentioned. So this is the current situation in this area. As we push further south to the thorax sector, and I'm going to leave all these arrows around here because it's relevant. Krimsky is also mentioned in the reports on the Ukrainian side, and thorax, of course, is still part of the main battle. So the front line here continues to be looking really complicated. Doesn't make sense a lot. Doesn't make a lot of sense because what the hell is this? Like yeah, it's just a car wreck. So so that's all. And if let's say your hair look like this, you should really ask for a refund from your hairdresser. Over in the New York sector, this sector is also like it's just totally broken. Like okay, Zoria sector. So the New York region here is pretty quiet. In the Zoria sector, this is Zoria. There is fighting reported at Staромykolivka, at Zoria. And the Russian forces have now confirmed to have captured Oleksandropil due to this geolocation, with the Russian forces now geolocated here in the flanking operation towards Zoria. And this push around here now threatens an encirclement of any Ukrainian forces south of this position, because the Russians are already at Staромykolivka, around here. And then now you have this geolocation of Russian forces here. So the Ukrainian forces that is defending this front line here is now getting encircled if they are there. So the only sensible thing right now is that they have to withdraw and try to escape this potential double pincer. So there is a problem right here. We have this potential pincer around north of Staромykolivka. However, from the south of Romanivka, the Russians could also do another pincer and close the second door. So the Ukrainians have to really make some clear decisions what they're going to do, because this is like a really terrible place to be in, and we really do not know what the Russians will do. So a lot of times they do not really close the encirclements, which is also probably much worse. Like if you got encircled, at least you can surrender. But if you got like semi encircled, then you are like forced to redraw, and then you might get killed off in the process. I'm not sure what's worse. And over in the western flank, we have fighting reported at Yablonivka, as the Russians have fully captured Novoelenivka. Fighting is still reported in this region here. Fighting is reported towards Popivka and Nova Potovka. And the Ukrainian mapping have considered that this entire area west and northwest of Tarasivka is entirely under Russian control right now, furthering this mess, this chaotic mess around here. I got a feeling, I just want we are now 18 minutes in. Maybe I should have thought about this much earlier. Now we're having the peace negotiation happening, in Turkey. Yeah, it's in Turkey. So and then the problem now is that if you are the Ukrainian side and you know that you are already the underdog, you are actually losing the war. Could the peace talk, to the actual existence of having peace talks, demotivate the Ukrainian soldiers to actually fight? So I got a feeling that all this talk about the peace negotiations may have demotivated the Ukrainians to defend. Many might want to save their lives and not die, just when the peace might be coming around the corner. They might withdraw to safer place rather than getting hit, getting killed off in the front line. I think that might be a possibility to consider. So might explain some of these very big captures that the Russians have been taking. So just some possibility that I'm thinking about. So we move on to the next front line, which is the Pokrov front. So this is Pokrov city, and this is the Pokrov front. So and we also have Minokhrad around here, which is where the first sector of the front line we're going to cover around here. So this is Minokhrad, and this is the very complicated Minokhrad sector. Russian forces have largely have captured most of Melanivka. They are on the verge of full capture of Melanivka. Fighting is still reported around here. Fighting is also mentioned at Yelizavetivka. The Russian forces have now confirmed to have captured Marolubivka and Mikhailivka. I will zoom in a bit. No, fighting, although is still being reported here. Fighting is reported also at Promin as well as Minokhrad. So I want to zoom in here because it's very complicated around here. So as we zoom in, the last SITREP I asked, where the hell is Mikhailivka? It's apparently here. So one of the commenters actually say that it's just next across the river at Marolubivka, and I found it. So thank you so much for your help. Like you see, together, we are stronger. So geolocations, there is Russian forces raising the flag all over the place, in all these different places. This tree confirms the Russians' capture of Marolubivka, and this new one, this only just published today, confirms the Russians' capture of Mikhailivka. The Russian Defense Ministry have announced the capture of both of these places as well, and this is a massive capture. Like I said, the Ukrainians seems to have lost interest to defend, to really hold their ground at all costs. Like, this is a firm change in their usual way of operating. Like, they used to very not want to give up. They really fight as much as they can. But nowadays, it seems like they're giving up the territories much more easier. And like I said, it might be related to the peace negotiation. So the Russian forces have captured Marolubivka and Mikhailivka. This entirely changes the strategic situation around here, because with this frontline change, and you can see that the pincer around here, this is going to become a pincer, and everything here is going to be taken by the Russian forces, and the Ukrainians will have to withdraw. And the Russians would now be able to attack into Mykolaiivka, Novoekonomichny, and then flank north towards Chervony Liman and do this massive pincer or massive flanking operation into the rear of Minokhrad, something that I've talked about a long time ago. As I said that it doesn't make sense to punch straight into Pokrov and Minokhrad. I feel like the sensible thing is to do this flanking operation, cutting the Ukrainian off from all sides, forcing them to withdraw northward. I think this is what I think is sensible. Over in the Pokrov sector, so this at the Pokrov sector, we have fighting reported at Lysivka, towards Pokrov, Vivrove, and Kotline. So on its own, this is nothing special because I said this is a static front line. I don't expect the Russians to push into Pokrov. I don't think so. So there is geolocation of a Russian airstrike though, happening in the south of Pokrov. And then we move on to the western flank. So let me see, how do I read this? So over at the western flank is very complicated. So so in the northern part of the western flank, so let me think, how do I do this? Fighting is reported at Udashne, Novoserhievka, Novo-Oleksandrivka, and there is two geolocations that massively changes the front line. One in the south of Novoserhievka, the other one in the south, also in the south of Novoserhievka. So the Russian forces fully captured all of these areas. I have explained in the frontline changes report, how this is mapped and why this matters. And the Russian forces have now gone even closer to the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. Now the distance between the border and the geolocation is merely less than 2 kilometers. The Russians are going to reach there very soon. And one of these targets, if the Russians are here right now, one of the targets is to take this crossing. They need to take this crossing at the Solona River and attack into the rear of Novoserhievka in the two-prong attack. And if they have this bridge, they basically is at the border of the Dnipropetrovsk. So this is a very depressing situation for the Ukrainians. There's there's really not much cards the Ukrainians can play. And somehow, the ISW, still, Institute of Study of War, still talk about, they're whining about why the Russians are not giving concession and not negotiating in good faith. It's like, Over in the southern flank, in the south, the Russian forces are attacking at Kotlyarivka towards Horikove as well as Troitsky. So this area is still in operations, but the distance here is now bigger than what's on top. Previously, this was the closest point the Russians were to the border. Now this part have overtaken, is getting closer. So very exciting time for the pro-Russian side of people. And we move into the Koma front. This is Koma, and this is the Koma front. Over at the Andriivka sector, the Russian forces attack at Andriivka, Konstantinopel, as well as Bahatir. There's a geolocation of Russian forces in the south of Bahatir, confirming Russian presence. But in all, this one, nothing special about this. Over in the Koma sector region, not much to talk about. In the Bulatsky, Vinnypole, Privony region, fighting is reported at Bulatsky. And then there is fighting reported at Privony and Vinnypole. However, the geolocation confirms the Russians' capture of Vinnypole, and including everything south of it. This confirms Russian full capture of Vinnypole and Privony. So both settlements is now captured. Now the Russians can push north towards this town of Shevchenko. So this battle have been waging for a super long time. The Ukrainians have done everything they could, but like I said, the negotiations may be affecting the morale. In the south, there is fighting reported at Novopil and towards Temerivka. There is a geolocation of Russian airstrike, totally showing even in this very obscure front line, most people don't. I think most of the casual Ukraine war followers may not even know of these places exist or the fighting is happening around here, and the Russians are actually launching airstrikes in such an obscure place where nothing here is very strategically important. So it just shows the Russians really have a lot of resources on their hand right now. And in the rear positions around here, as we move into the Zaporizhia front, Berezovye is mentioned, Novokhrikhovka is also mentioned. So a lot of hits in the rear positions as the Russians is going to penetrate this one line of defense. If the Russians penetrate through, it's going to be all hell break loose. And we move into the Zaporizhia front. Zaporizhia city, and this is the Zaporizhia front. And now this time around, we have all updates from all of the sectors. Over at Huaypole sector, fighting is reported at Vysoke or Chevone. It is mentioned here by the Russian Defense Ministry on the 15th. So this happened. And then over in the Orikhiv sector, this is Orikhiv. Fighting is reported towards Orikhiv or near Orikhiv, towards Novodanilivka, towards Novoandreevka, and Malatomashka. However, this area here, the Ukrainians did take back some grounds based on geolocation, where the Ukrainians have taken some of these facilities around here. Not sure what kind of thingy is that, what kind of facility, but the Ukrainians have retaken some of these areas here. So showing that the Russians did not manage to get a firm foothold inside Malatomashka. And over at the Kayamsky sector, this is Kayamsky. Fighting is reported in this region here as well. Fighting is reported at Kayamsky, Stepove, Mali Shebaki, and Shebaki. What is important here is the confirmation of the full capture of Lubkove. So we have been waiting for this little part here for a long time. And we have the latest geolocation confirming the Russians have moved and captured the rest of Lubkove. And this confirms the full capture of Lubkove. This information is just new today. So that's all for the frontline changes and the updates over at the Zaporizhia front. And we move on to the last front line at the Kherson front. And before I continue, do press the like button, subscribe, and also DPA Army members, be careful. Don't get sniped by the YouTube sniper. Check your subscription, make sure you are still alive. And also, happy birthday to you if your birthday today. And yeah, Thank you for all the support, and as usual, nowadays views are very unpredictable, so do support on Patreon. That will be one of the best place to help me create a financial cushion so that I can continue to do this, because I have a family to feed. Yeah. So anyway, I have launched some initiative to do news blast across on Twitter and Telegram. I have been experimenting it, so hopefully it's going to be useful to help to get all of us more informed about all the various news that's happening around Asia. I'll be focusing on Asia first, and then I will consider whether to do more into European and American or the rest of the world. But we shall see how this goes. Okay, so we go into the last front line, which is the Kherson front. And the Kherson front, we have the mention of fighting in the Dnipro direction as usual by the Ukrainian side. Otherwise, there is shelling reported at Mykolaiivka, Tokarivka, Pontianivka, Antonivka, as well as Dniprovsky by the Russian Defense Ministry's report. Otherwise, that's about it. So this is the summary for the day of 1176, 1177 for the 14th to 15th of May. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next update.